And if you have any function which takes empty set to 0, then which is also defined on an algebra, then it gives rise to an outer measure. That's what we saw, right? And then given an outer measure, we defined what are known as the so-called mu star measurable sets, right? And therefore, when you restrict this, so what first thing is that this collection of all mu star measurable sets, they form a sigma algebra. And when you restrict this outer measure to this collection, then you get a measure, and the triplet is going to be complete. Right. First thing. Second, how to get a measure, right? So first thing, to get a measure, you need an outer measure. But the lemma says that if you want an outer measure, you need some function, right? Just like how you had the concept of length in the case of R, you need some function, right? Yeah, so such a function is what is known as a pre-measure, right? So it is called as a pre-measure, right? So once you have a pre-measure, it gives rise to a outer measure. And this pre-measure is defined on an algebra, right? It gives rise to a outer measure, and therefore you get a measure. Fine. Now, if you have a pre-measure, and if you extend it by means of the outer measure, and then restrict to this collection of all mu star measurable sets, first thing is that does this outer measure actually extend mu naught? That means when you restrict this mu star to A naught, does it coincide with mu naught? Yes, that's what we saw. That was the last one that we did. And second thing is that, or sets from the given original algebra A naught also mu star measurable? The answer is again yes. So these are the two things that we saw in the last class. Now let's proceed. Fine. Now the question is, so whatever we have done, let me summarize them. And we'll also answer the question of what is known as uniqueness, right? So let A naught subset of 2 raised to the power omega be an algebra. Mu naught, pre-measure on A naught, and script A, the sigma algebra generated by A naught, right? So first thing, there exists a measure mu on A whose restriction to A naught is mu naught. That means what? Mu equal to mu star restricted to A, where mu star is the outer measure induced by A naught and mu naught. Because for an outer measure, you need an algebra and an pre-measure. Once you have these two, then there is a natural outer measure, right? Second one, if mu is another measure on A that extends mu naught, then nu of E is less than or equal to mu of E for all E in E with equality. So when will they be equal? With equality when mu of E is finite. Right. Last one is about uniqueness. If mu naught is sigma finite, then mu is the unique extension of mu naught to a measure on A. Okay, so now what are those things that we have already proved? What are those things that we have already proved? What are the things? There are 3 points, and among them, what are those things that we have proved?
First part.
So first part we are done.
Exactly. We have already finished first part, yes. Okay, so how do you get a measure mu? In fact, the answer is there in the statement itself. How do you get a measure?
By the lemma 1, we defined that we set mu of A is equal to infimum of the
So
covering set.
right. You get an outer measure. Then you get a measure, not an outer measure.
We take that outer measure on
Huh?
star measurable sets.
So you are restricting to mu star measurable sets. But then what happens on the sigma algebra generated by A naught, not on the mu star measurable sets. Not on the mu star measurable sets. But what we wanted is on A, the sigma algebra generated by A naught. Yes, how do you? Well, what is the relation between mu star measurable sets and script A or the sigma algebra A? Well, what is the relation between mu star measurable sets and A naught?
A naught is contained in the mu star measurable sets.
Yes, exactly. So A naught is contained in the class of mu star measurable sets, right? And therefore, what can you say about A and the class of mu star measurable sets?
The sigma algebra of, generated by A naught is also contained in the sigma algebra generated by
Exactly.
U star.
Exactly. Right. So let's begin with the proof. Yes. Yeah. So first thing is that since I'll denote by let me use the same. Let m mu star equal to all those E subset of omega such that E is mu star measurable. We know that. What is that we know? We know that A naught is contained in M mu star. And therefore, script A is contained in M mu star. Why is this true? Why is this true? Ankit.
Because sir, if S1 is contained in S2, then the sigma algebra generated by S1, sigma S1 is contained into sigma S2.
Yes, exactly. So this mu star is already a sigma algebra, and this A is the smallest sigma algebra containing A naught, and therefore A is contained in mu star. Right. Fine. So let mu equal to mu star restricted to A. So this will satisfy. So this will prove what satisfy. This will prove the existence of the measure. Right? Will this proves. So this proves the existence of the measure, right? So now you have a measure. Second one is the relation between the measure. Right. Fine. So let nu be any measure on script A such that gamma restricted to A naught is equal to or restricted to A naught coincides with mu naught. Fine. So we need the relation between gamma and mu. Fine. That means so the mu is exactly one that is given by 1. Now let E belong to script A. Now suppose that E is contained in union over n in n an, where all these ans belong to A naught. Then gamma of E, because gamma is a measure, right? So this is going to be, it is going to be monotonic. This is less than or equal to mu of E is less than or equal to mu of union over n in n an. All these ans, they belong to A naught, and therefore this union belongs to A. and therefore this makes sense. Now, because again this is a measure, it is going to be countably additive, in fact subadditive, less than or equal to summation. We do not know whether it is they are disjoint or not. Therefore, it is subadditive on this collection, which is less than or equal to summation n in n nu of an, which is same as. But all these ans again they belong to a naught, and on a naught this nu coincides with mu naught. Therefore, this is same as summation over n in n mu of a. So this is true for every such collection. So since this is true, for every cover of E by sets from A naught, this is true for every, and therefore take the infimum on the right hand side. It follows that nu E is less than or equal to mu star E, but E it's a set from A, therefore mu star coincides with mu. That is how we have defined. That's it, done. That's what we wanted, right? So one part we have shown, and there is one more part, that with equality when mu of E is finite, right? Right. Now, so let me set A as this union over n and n, an, then nu A, because again this is a measure, and therefore this is, well, I can write it as limit n tending to infinity union j running from 1 to n aj, right? Now because, and this is an increasing collection, right? This union j running from 1 to n aj, this is an increasing collection, therefore I can write this is going to be limit n tending to infinity one to n aj, right? But where do these belong to? This union j running from 1 to n aj, all aj's they come from the algebra A naught, and algebra is closed under finite union, and therefore this union j running from 1 to n aj, it is again an element of A naught, and on A naught this nu coincides with mu naught in fact. So therefore this is same as limit n tending to infinity mu of the union 1 to n aj. I'll write it in the next line. N tending to infinity mu of the union, again mu is a measure, therefore you can take the limit inside, and once you do that you will get it as this is same as mu of E, right? Fine. So we haven't used the fact that A is finite till now, huh? So what we have used is the fact that if you have an union over n and n an, and all these ans comes from A naught, so only in this case they are equal, fine. So if, so let E in A such that mu of E is finite. right? So, by definition, of mu star, the way we have defined mu star in terms of the infimum and all those, tells us that we can choose edges such that mu of A is less than mu E plus epsilon. So mu E no, basically what I right. So mu E plus epsilon, right? Therefore, and mu E has got finite measure. So therefore, mu of A minus E, because this has got finite measure, this is same as mu of A minus E, mu A minus mu E, which is less than epsilon. Right. Thus, mu A, because we already know that. What is it that we know? In the previous part, we have already shown this. That here, where did we show? Here. Mu E is less than or equal to mu E. So to show equality, it's enough if we can show that mu E is less than or equal to mu E. Right. So we are going to show that. What we wanted is E. Mu E. And E is contained in the union, and therefore this is less than or equal to mu A, which is equal to mu A. It is same as gamma A. That's sorry, mu A. Mu A. Right. Now let me write mu of A as, because A contains E, therefore let me write it as E union A minus E, and these two are disjoint sets, and therefore this is going to be same as mu E plus mu of A minus E, which is less than mu E plus epsilon. So now epsilon is arbitrary. Since epsilon greater than 0 is arbitrary, we get mu E less than or equal to mu E. And that's exactly what we wanted, right? So now comes the last part. What is known as about the uniqueness. So suppose that here the fundamental assumption is that this mu naught is sigma finite. That mu naught is sigma finite. Right. That is omega has been written as the union of ANs with with all ANs coming from A naught and mu naught of AN is finite. Right. Yeah, so let me just say that without loss of generality, let us assume that ANs are pairwise disjoint. And you all know how to do that. Then for any E in A, we'll have to show that mu E equal to gamma E. Mu E equal to mu, I can write it as union 1 to n an intersection with E, because this union is 1 to infinity, So this union is nothing but gamma, omega, and omega intersection with E is same as E. Right. So this is same as mu of union 1 to n, writing it as n, 1 to infinity, an intersection with E. Right. And all these sets are disjoint, pairwise disjoint, therefore using the subadditivity, this is same as summation over n and n mu of an intersection with E. An belongs to A naught and therefore belongs to A, and E, it's again a set from A, and E has got, so all these ANs, they have got finite measure. That's what it says, mu naught of AN is finite, right? And therefore, what is that? The part 2 tells us that what does part 2 tell us here? So it tells us that equality holds in this whenever mu E is finite. So AN has got finite measure, and therefore AN intersection E. This is again a set with finite measure, and therefore this is same as summation over n and n mu of AN intersection with E. Again, so let's do the steps again. Once again, using the fact that mu is a measure, union 1 to infinity, I'll write it as union over n in n, an intersection with E, which is same as mu of union over n in n, an intersection with E, which is nothing but mu of E. That's it, and that's exactly what we wanted. Right. That is mu equal to mu. They both coincide. Right. So that's what we wanted, and we have done it. Right. So natural question here is that why should we do all these? What is the point in doing such kind of abstract? I have only 5 minutes, so I don't want to start something new, but what am I going to do is, let me just give you hints about what we are going to do in the next class. We are going to describe all Borel measures on the real line. This is the content of our next lecture. Yes, we are going to describe all the Borel measures on the real line. How are they given by? If you have done a course on probability, in fact, so this is one of the important topics in the context of what is known as the so-called probability theory. Because the so-called what is known as the distributions, they give rise to measures. And that's the one of the most important one. It plays an important role in the context of probability theory. But anyhow, so how are they given by? In fact, Borel measures. So you'll see that there is a 1-1 correspondence between Borel measures on the real line and increasing right continuous functions. Yes. So in order to do that, we are going to look into what is known as the so-called half open interval. So our interest will be intervals of this kind. It will be open on the left and closed on the right. Left open intervals. Left open intervals. So sometimes I'll say that left open, sometimes I'll also use half open intervals. So this is what we are going to use in the next lecture. So the next lecture, we are going to describe all Borel measures on the real line, and we'll see that the Lebesgue measure is an example, is one of the examples of this construction. Just by choosing the simple function fx equal to x, you get the Lebesgue measure. And if you choose an arbitrary increasing and right continuous function, you get an arbitrary Borel measure on the real line. That's the point there. Right? If you have got any doubts, you can please. Otherwise, let me stop today's lecture.